All right, welcome back. Back with another quick little review here. Apologies in advance to anyone who was expecting this video last night, as I had initially planned. Usually Mondays are the day that I do my South American weekly review, or at least, again, that's my plan. But because of the fact that I was working on my tier list video and I couldn't have worked on it any other time, I thought that I would just delay this until this morning. So that's what I did. But I'm still going to be having my China review coming out later today as well. And if you're at all curious about checking out my tier list video that I made for all the TI-10 players, feel free to check that out, link in description, as well as the link to our Discord server. If you're at all curious about joining a DPC related server where we talk all things players, teams, stuff like that, feel free to join in the description. Getting into it now, starting off with South America here. This is going to be covering every single series that happened since the start of the DPC, including the matches that I already technically reviewed in my old review format. I'm going to try and do the same thing as I did for my Eastern Europe review, where I kind of worked through it a little bit quickly. And yeah, so starting off with the upper division, I'm going to be going through all of the matches, starting with the debut on December 2nd between Thunder Predator and Infamous. This was Thunder Predator just kind of beating on Infamous for an entire series. Notably, Infamous, I think, really shot themselves in the foot in this series, draft-wise. I mean, game one, they had a Slark mid, which it's like, okay, you have it against a Bat Rider. That's a pretty typical matchup. But they picked it, and then they picked a Faceless Void safe lane, so there wasn't any synergy between Faceless Void and Slark. And then the rest of their team was like a Brewmaster, Rubik, and a Gyro position 5, so there was just no damage going into the Chrono. And really, like, even though he was able to hit some really impressive Chronospheres, again, there's just no damage. And so Thunder Predator just kind of rolled this series. That was just one game, but the second game was pretty similar. In fact, it was even worse because I think Thunder Predator had a weaker draft in game 2, and they just still won. They just completely demolished Infamous. There was just no opening for them. So they go up 1-0 in the season from there. Following that, on December 3rd, we have No Ping versus Hokori. And yeah, this was game one was a total stomp. I mean, the first game was 25-3 in 23 minutes. Like, there was really no opening for Hokori, and one of those 3 kills happened right before the GG mark. They just like all-inned on the enemy carry and they killed him, but it didn't end up paying off. And in game 2, I really liked Hokori's draft. I really wish it worked. They had an anti-mage carry who had a bit of an unorthodox build. I believe he started off with like Vanguard or Echo Saber, something weird like that. He avoided going for the Battle Fury because he was playing against a Storm Spirit, and his offlaner was an Alchemist, and his Alchemist built him Ags off the start. It was a pretty close game. I'd say that No Ping was leading throughout the most part of it, but I was really hoping that this anti-mage build would work, because I think it'd be super cool if anti-mage actually had an alternative to the very stagnant build that he's had for years now. But No Ping take this series 2-0. Later that day, we then had the debut of APU King of Kings against Beast Coast. And Jesus, what can I even say about that game one? It was just under 60 minutes, so much back and forth. King of Kings had a pretty fantastic and huge lead heading into the late game, and they just try and siege high ground with the Aegis. Beast Coast has a nice defense, and then they kind of chase too far on the side of King of Kings, looking for, or trying too hard to force a fight. And the game just spirals out of control. There's crazy team fights all around. The late game in this game was fantastic. Again, a lot of insane team fights in the late game, which you love to see. But in the end, it's Beast Coast that ends up winning the fight that matters, and they win this first game. And then in the second game, again, kind of close. Definitely a lot closer than the start of game one, which King of Kings was leading. But Beast Coast win a big fight around the 30-minute mark, and from there the game just kind of spirals out of control. So they win their first series. King of Kings would end up looking for revenge in their next series here on December 5th, where they play against Lava. However, it didn't start off very well for them, as Lava kind of just stomps the first game. Kataro, playing the safe lane Juggernaut for the side of Lava, had a fantastic game. He was 20-0. It really just felt like it was one of those drafts that there was just no opening for King of Kings in that entire thing. But this is why it's not just a best of one series, because in game 2, then it's King of Kings that's doing the stomping, and they would proceed to stomp for the rest of the series as well. A nice early game for King of Kings. Mini playing his Quaswex Invoker in both of these games that King of Kings was ended up winning. He looked fantastic on it. He was making super nice rotations. His item build was on point, and he just always felt like he was a super high impact player in this series. So King of Kings, they steal a series off of Lava after getting stomped in game 1, and yeah, King of Kings, they end up going even on the week 1-1, which is something that you'll love to see, especially after losing your first series. And finally, ending things off, we have Thunder Predator versus Hokori. Heading into this, Thunder Predator, of course, being 1-0, Hokori being 0-1. In the first game, there was a close early game, but Pakaz on his, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, on his Luna ends up going 13-1-5 in a 30-minute stomp. 28-9 was the final kill score. Pretty ridiculous. And then in game 2, Thunder Predator, again, kind of a questionable draft move. I talked about it in the Infamous series, how in game 2 they kind of maybe lost the draft a little bit, but they still won. They picked Batrider mid into an Abaddon. And it was a first phase Abaddon, second phase Batrider. And they ended up putting the Abaddon mid on Hokori, which is maybe what Thunder Predator was trying to bait because it looked pretty bad. He ended up like 1-6 or something like that on the mid Abaddon. And yeah, safe lane Templar Assassin, something that we've been seeing quite a bit for Pakaz. He has himself another fantastic series. He goes 11-2-13. This game ends in just over 33 minutes, and 38-14 is your kill score. So fantastic series for Thunder Predator. They're looking like a clear contender for this major. Of course, this being the old no ping roster, pretty much. Yeah, they're off to a fantastic start. Taking a look now at the updated standings, as I was just talking about, Thunder Predator is off to a 2-0 start. We then have No Ping and Beast Coast tied at 1-0 each. They have some more series coming up later this week. With APU King and Kings, who split their series 1-1. SG Esports actually being the only team in this entire upper division that has yet to play a series. So they are 0-0 right now. We don't know how that new roster is going to look yet. Then near the bottom at 6th place, we have Infamous and Lava tied at 0-1. And then at the bottom, we have Hokori starting off 0-2. Hokori has played against some pretty tough teams, notably No Ping and Thunder Predator are projected to be, I'd say, top 4 teams. Thunder Predator definitely in the top in the race for top 2 right now, but still, they didn't take a single game off of either of these guys. So yeah, we'll have to see how it ends up going for them. Looking now at some stats, the top heroes in South America's upper division right now is Mars. 8 games, 6 wins, very solid. I believe there was only 1 game when he wasn't contested because he is also one of the most banned heroes in this region. But he doesn't end up making it onto the leaderboard, at least in the upper division. In the lower division, he does. For the other top heroes, we have Luna, who's 3-1. We've been seeing a lot of Luna, specifically with some sort of heal support like Abaddon or Io. Those games are usually very tempo-based, which is something we've been seeing a lot in this meta. And then we have Wind Ranger, 2-0, and that has been played in numerous different positions, usually mid, but sometimes plus 4. Depending on which division you're looking at, it could vary. She's 2-0 right now. Looking at the worst heroes, there are actually like 7 heroes right now that are 0-2. No heroes that specifically have a terrible win rate. Some of those heroes being like Hoodwink, Ancient Apparition. I didn't bother listing them all there because there would have been too many, but you get the idea. Not too many heroes that are just automatic losses, it seems. For most banned, we have Weaver with 10. So there was 11 games in this upper division, and in 10 of them, Weaver was banned. And unlike in Eastern Europe, the only game where he wasn't banned, he actually lost. So Weaver right now, even though he's the most banned, 0% win rate technically. So I forgot to mention 60 total heroes picked in this upper division across those 11 games and 57 different heroes banned. So more heroes picked than in Eastern Europe and in Southeast Asia for those first 11 games. A lot more diversity, it seems, for South America. For looking at the teams now, the top GPM teams being Beast Coast with 27-07, they lead the pack. Quite a lead over second place as well. We have No Ping with 24-31, and then Thunder Predator with 24-26. Thunder Predator, of course, having more games played, meaning they've been more consistent, so that 24-26 is quite impressive, especially because their games aren't even that long. I've talked about it before. Usually your GPM gets bigger and bigger the longer your games are, and considering that they've stomped all 4 of the games that they've played so far, it's pretty impressive that they're in the top 3 right now for GPM. For XPM, like I mentioned, Thunder Predator, 31-82. Very impressive, especially because they've got more games played than some of the other teams as well. Beast Coast with 30-35, and then APU King of Kings with 29-06. We then have in the top KDA, No Ping leading the way with 11.32. Thunder Predator with 9.04, and then way down, but at a much more reasonable and sustainable amount, we have King of Kings with 3.98 KDA. Looking now at the players, top GPM players being K1 with 834, RDL with 775, and Pakaz with 725. Pakaz, of course, being from Thunder Predator, and RDO being from No Ping. We then have in the top XPM, Dark Mago, Pakaz, and K1 with 821, 808, and 763 XPM, relatively. And then finally, for KDA, we have RDO with a 42 KDA, which of course is going to go down. You know, he's only played 1 series so far. That's not going to be a sustainable number, but still he leads the way. We then have Oscar with 15.5 KDA and Dark Mago with 14.14. Dark Mago, obviously, from Thunder Predator, and Oscar from Thunder Predator as well. So very impressive week for Thunder Predator. It's going to be interesting to see if they maintain that lead that they have over the standings. Again, there's only 2 spots for this upper division to make it into the major, so it's going to be very, very competitive. It's going to get down to the wire a little bit. Taking a look now at our lower division, this is going to consist of 6 lower division series as opposed to 5, because I'm going to be including the first Monday of lower division Dota that we had in South America, including the one from yesterday as well. So just to keep in mind that there's going to be more series in this lower division. I'm still going to try and breeze through it a little bit quickly here. Starting off with Infinity versus Unknown. Infinity looking very good, looking very dominant. Unknown struggling to adapt to being in this lower division. They, of course, were in the upper division last season, and they haven't really looked all that good since getting into this lower division either. They're actually 0-2, but we'll get to that second series. But overall, strong start for Infinity. They go up 1-0 on the season. The entire series, like both games in the series added together, were only 53 minutes. Total kill score of 64-17. In one of those games, Unknown only had 2 kills. Yeah, dominant series from Infinity. Next up, on December 2nd, we had Interitus versus Inverse. And Interitus was just kind of handling them this whole game. Something that I had noticed and I had talked about in a review I did previously is that Interitus was just really, really good at poking and prodding, baiting out fights, and getting good pickoffs to lead to good fights. It would be a close early game that would head into a very close mid game, but it would just be the way that they'd be able to dance around team fights that really gave Interitus the advantage in this series. And so that makes me super impressed with them, given that they're a lower division team. This makes me believe that they should be one of the top 2 teams just off of watching one series there. I was all around really impressed with Interitus there. Next up, we had G Pride versus Omega. In this series, I think Now had a fantastic series. In game 1, he had PA, and I talked about it in my review as well, how I thought he had fantastic map awareness. He was just super, super cautious about getting ganked, but also finding a lot of farm. And in this first game, Omega, notably Mingati on his Bloodseeker, was kind of popping off in the mid-game. Slow start, but in the mid-game, once he gets his BKB and a few items, he was getting a lot of kills, cleaning up a lot of kills with his Bloodseeker, building up a lot of momentum. But I think it ends up being his itemization that lost him this game. Rather than opting for maybe an MKB to kill the PA or itemizing some sort of damage build to help him snowball even further, he then itemized for a bit of utility. He ended up upgrading his Maelstrom into a Gleipnir, which did not look very good at all. And eventually, because they just didn't have that extra damage coming up from their hard carry Bloodseeker, yeah, this ended up being a pretty free game for Now on his PA. And in the next game, Now would have a fantastic game as well on his Ursa. He goes 22, 2, and 5. It was a complete stomp, and it looked like one of those series where Omega had a lead in game 1, they let it slip away, and then after that they lost that lead in game 1. They never really got back into the series after that. They kind of just fell apart. So yeah, all around fantastic series for Omega. And sorry, not Omega, G Pride. And for Omega, you know, they got some things to work on a little bit. Again, that game 2, pretty rough. Next up, moving into Balrogs versus Wolf Team, which was previously known as I believe it was Our Way, which is the HFN and King RD stack that came in through those open qualifiers. Throughout this whole game, it was pretty close throughout the most part. There was a lot of kill trading, but no real kill lead throughout the game until around the mid game when Wolf was able to take a Roshan. They started building up a bit of a net worth lead, but this game does end up going late, and it was very close. And it was until HFN tried to solo kill the enemy Medusa, and he just kind of died 1 versus 5 with no buyback. And that ultimately ended up being what kind of just shot Wolf Team in the foot there. Like, it was kind of a questionable play, maybe a bit of a desperate one. They felt the game was slipping out of hand with the Medusa getting more and more farmed, but going in 1v5 without buyback nonetheless, kind of a questionable play from HFN, a previously tier 1 Dota player. Well, maybe not tier 1, but an upper division player in South America, making a pretty easy mistake, I would say. Game 2 was a very close mid game, but in the around the 30-minute mark, there was a really well executed fight for Team Wolf, and they end up taking the game off of that. And in game 3, again, close series so far. It wasn't until around the 30-minute mark that there was eventually a team fight win for Balrogs, and they win the series 2-1. All around close series, not necessarily a super intense one. Maybe game 1 was a little bit more intense, especially with that weird play at the end. But they look good. They take the series 2-1. And for Wolf, I mean, they let that first game slip out of their hands a little bit, and then they end up winning second game. So if they had just been a little bit more patient maybe in that first game, they could have won the series 2-0. Who knows? Next up, we have Inverse versus Unknown. And again, I'm not going to touch on it too much. Unknown just never really showed up in the series. This kind of looked really rough for them. Inverse was playing really well. But yeah, Unknown in game 2 never had a net worth lead. Like, never at any point in the game, even off the initial bounty runes, even after a few kills, they were never, it was always in the side of Inverse. So another rough series for Unknown, and they're off to an 0-2 start, and we'll get into that when we get to the standings. Finally, ending things off with Infinity versus Enteradus, which I was very much looking forward to, as both of these teams won their initial series, and it was very, very well done. Infinity dominated Unknown, who of course has been one of the weaker teams, so maybe that wasn't as impressive. But Enteradus, like I talked about, was very, very good with their team fight execution, specifically like the pre-team fight execution. But yeah, Infinity showing that they didn't just win their series because Unknown is a bad team. No, they looked very, very good against Enteradus. Super clean game. There was a rough start in game 2 for their mid SF. He died notably around 3 times by the 10-minute mark, but after that point, they cleaned up their game and they just take this series 2-0. So fantastic series for them. Looking now at the standings, like I mentioned, Infinity off to a 2-0 start, which is looking good. Again, they beat the other team that also had a series win that looked very impressive this week, so they're looking like one of the top runner-ups for this upper division slot, which of course you can only get if you finish top 2. We then have G Pride and Balrogs with 1-0 each. We have Enteradus and Inverse who are 1-1 each. And then we have Wolf 0-1 each, and Unknown 0-2 so far. So Unknown really needing to get some wins here. They went winless in their upper division last tour, and it'd be a real shame if they were to just go completely winless in this lower division now too, and they'd have to come in again through that open qualifier. Finally, taking a look at some stats now. For Radiant and Dire, they went 6 and 7 each, so Dire slightly favored. Same thing for first and last pick. Last pick ends up going 7 wins on 13 games. Taking a look at the top heroes now, there were 55 total heroes picked across those 13 games, so more games played than the upper division that I'm keeping stats of at least. But less heroes to be picked, which is not usually uncommon for lower division teams. Usually lower division teams have a strategy that they like to stick to. The most picked being Mars, or the best hero I should say being Mars with 5-0. Has yet to lose a game so far. Disruptor and Kunkka are both 4-1 each, those two also being very, very prominent. Disruptor was one that kind of surprised me because in other regions the hero is really struggling. Usually the hero falls behind in the laning stage and it can kind of fall apart, but it's looked really, really good in this region. And then Ogre Magi and Rubik being 3-1 each as well. For the worst heroes, we have Gyrocopter playing, going 1-4, mainly as a hard carry. We have not seen as much support Gyro as we have in some other regions. So Gyrocopter notably being one of those trap picks. And then Void Spirit going 2-5. I know Void Spirit's one of those mids that you'll kind of just pick into everything, but it hasn't really looked all that good when teams have been doing it so far. 2-5 is not very good at all. Looking at the most banned now, Legion Commander with 10 bans on 13 games. This is one that really surprised me because even in the games when he wasn't banned, which was 3, or she, I should say, she wasn't even picked. So kind of surprising to see Legion getting banned this much. We haven't even seen her getting picked all that much in some other regions as well, especially because heroes like OD are really popular in some other regions. And if you just pick a hero like Legion, then OD feels perfect for the game. We then have Mars with 8. So Mars was picked 5 times, banned 8, which means he was contested in every single game. And again, in all the games that he was picked, he won. We have Kunkka, Razor, and Weaver with 7 bans each as well. So Kunkka, again, being one of the most picked and the most banned. Another hero that was very high contested. That one's a little bit more common, though, across some other regions. Same thing as Mars. Looking now at the top teams GPM-wise, we have G-Pride leading the way off of their series. Notably, the first game was pretty long, and the second game was very dominant from them, so this makes a lot of sense. They lead the way with 26-26. We then have Our Way, previously known as Wolf Team. I should have written Wolf, that's my bad. They lead second place with 23-23. And then finally, we have Infinity in third place with, I put the wrong number there. They ended up third place. I accidentally wrote their XPM number there, so you'll have to take my word for it. Next up for XPM, we have G-Pride leading the way once again with a 32.52 XPM, which is insane. That's a very, very high average that is probably going to be dropping throughout the next couple days. We have Balrogs with 28.75, and then finally Inverse with 27.80. Looking at the top KDAs now, we have Infinity with 9.58, we have G-Pride with 6.23, and Balrogs with a very reasonable 3.70. Finally, now looking at the top players, Berna leads the way GPM-wise. Again, I talked about it in that series. His Medusa against Team Wolf looked fantastic. He has a 742 GPM. We then have Now, who again, another player that I thought was a real standout on G-Pride. He has a 730 GPM, and Parker with a 722. He previously, or he is currently playing on Infinity, that I should say, as their carry. Top XPM, we have now, again, very solid player, 786. ADRX, who's playing for Inverse, he's their position 1 right now, 758. We then have Kara, who's playing for Gorilla Pride, and he's actually their position 3, so pretty strange to see a position 3 on the leaderboard for XPM. That's usually not something we see at all. So that's pretty impressive. And finally, top KDA here, we have Pi with 16.4, we have Parker with 15.8, and now with 13.75. So yeah, I did my upper and my lower division preview earlier this week, actually just a few days ago. So if you want to check that out, feel free. If you want to know at all what coming matches are coming for South America this week. But yeah, this has been my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I'm having a review for China coming up later today, and I'll talk to you guys later.